He didn't do much. He slept all day and wrote all night. The characters in his novel didn't do much either. They loved and lost. Yet Marcel Proust's 2,000-page tome À la recherche du temps perdu, In Search of Lost Time, is considered the greatest French novel of the 20th century. Noted critic and memoirist André Aciman, whose own writing is influenced by Proust, talks to Canape about the perpetual fascination of little Marcel's Big Book of Memory.
Well, Marcel Proust is by now the most important French writer of the 20th century. It's without a question, he's the one that we will remember forever as having represented the 20th century. He is a man who's spent all his life cooking this book. The novel is about very few things, extremely few things, and yet it's such a long novel. It's about a young man who remembers having been a child and moves on and grows up into an older man who remembers having been a child and a young man, and who decides that all his life was about the desire to write a novel. That's really all it's about. But it also covers basic human needs, and very basic and primordial human needs. The need to be loved, the need to find love, the need to be happy.
Tiens, tu connais, c'est Victor Hugo. Il faut que l'herbe pousse et que les enfants meurent.
Tu lis Victor Hugo?
Et toi, François Champy, à ton âge?
Moi? Je suis déjà mort plusieurs fois. J'ai tenu à Albertine plus qu'à ma vie. Et puis j'ai cessé de l'aimer. C'est pareil pour Gilberte. Je ne l'aime plus depuis longtemps. Je suis devenu chaque fois quelqu'un d'autre. C'est comme cela qu'insensiblement, la mort vous devient indifférente.
Proust always gives us a sense that he was not fulfilled in love. And so that the only world he could create was the world of fiction. And all he does in his novel is remember moments when he was in society, meeting people, meeting a few girls, meeting a few men. And you don't have ever a sense that he was intimate with anybody except his mother, and there was some difficulty.
Ça, c'est la réalité cachée que je lis sur votre visage.
Et qu'est-ce que vous lisez?
Quelque chose qui ressemble à de la jalousie. Vrai ou faux?
There are many reasons why people have taken to Proust now. One, I think, has to do with the fact that he's, other than Freud, he's the only other voice we have where, in a sustained manner, we examine our feelings. We examine them through him examining his feelings and being extremely frank about them. Sexuality may not happen in Proust very much, but when it does, it's extremely frank. There are no secrets, no punches pulled. But that's only one of the reasons. The other reason is that Proust has cachet. It's a very cynical reason. Proust is chic.
Et vous trouvez? Moi, je crois que ces femmes-là ne sont jalouses que des femmes.
Pour d'autres, l'homme est l'ennemi. Il est celui qui apporte la mauvaise caresse. Moi, j'ai été très malheureux quand je sus que ma fiancée aimait un autre homme. Mais cela ne m'a jamais causé la même souffrance que si elle aimait les femmes.
Proust is a fabulous teacher. He teaches us how to write. Take, for example, that famous Proust sentence. It's always long. It seems to be even long-winded, but it's not. It teaches you to go searching. Every Proust sentence ends with a high. It doesn't bore you to, it doesn't sort of end with a whimper. It ends with a high, surprise, a little thing that happens at the very end, which was always unforeseen, and it's like a surprise cookie that you get at the very last.
Nous aussi, comme un gant.
Ah oui?
Apparemment, vous ne l'aimez pas beaucoup. Et pourtant, si j'ai bien compris, c'est une de vos parentes.
Oui, très vaguement. Du côté de mon mari, mais c'est lointain.
C'est étrange comment on se découvre des parents très proches ou très lointains selon le degré d'intérêt qu'on leur porte.
Teaches you how to be patient, how to look, and also how to surprise your reader. It's pure manipulation on one hand, and yet at the same time it's how you search for truth.
Dots, dots, and more dots. That's where Neo-Impressionism begins, but not where it ends. The artistic results are gloriously visible in the major retrospective of Paul Signac, displayed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Curator Susan Allison Stein tells Canape about how and why the shimmering colors and resplendent views of the sea, the ports, and the industrial suburbs fill Signac's near-magical canvases and watercolors.
Well, Neo-Impressionism really means the new Impressionists. They were the successors and saw themselves as the successors to the Impressionists, to their two champions of color and light. Neo-Impressionism was a term coined in 1886, shortly after the debut of Seurat's Le Grand Jade and paintings by Signac and Pissarro in a new style, which manifest multicolored spots or dots of color. The artists themselves preferred the term divisionism as opposed to the term which is more popularly in use, which is pointillism. Because pointillism, coming from the French word for dot, focuses only on the dotted brushwork, whereas divisionism focuses on the idea behind it, which was the use of divided or separate strokes of color. These artists felt, by systematically placing two small discrete patches of color side by side on the canvas, that they would obtain a more brilliant, more harmonious result. And to this interest in color and light, they added compositional harmony, which was really not just for the Neo-Impressionists, but for other artists who emerged as important figures in the mid-1880s. We think of Van Gogh or Gauguin, for example, or Cézanne. It was an emphasis on this timeless character rather than the glimpse or the momentary shot of nature. Paul Signac, at age 16, quit school. He came into an inheritance from his father. He immersed himself in the sort of heady anarchist circles of literary figures, artists, performers that congregated in Montmartre cafes. He dabbled in writing. He even publishing two pastiches in the style of Émile Zola, who he quite admired. He took up sailing. Under the impact of Monet, whose first one-man show was held in 1880, these other ambitions and dalliances were crystallized, and he decided to become an artist. Studied the works of the Impressionist painters, whom he saw as the progressives in galleries and exhibitions. When, in 1884, he saw Seurat's Bathers at Asnières. This painting of 1884 suggested for the young artist then casting about for a more structured approach, a model for a more ambitious style. By the fall of 1885, when Seurat is implementing his new style in his painting A Sunday Afternoon on the Grand Jade, Signac implements this technique himself in his own paintings. Several of the paintings which were shown in 1886 are in fact on view in the gallery, including a snow scene, the famous gas tanks at Clichy, and also a view along the railroad tracks at the Bois Cologne. In the late 1880s, Signac established his working pattern. He spent his winters in Paris working on figure compositions. He spent the summers at coastal resorts. These allowed him to master his gift for marine painting, but also to indulge his passion for boating. Signac was an avid yachtsman. During the course of his lifetime, he owned some 30 craft. His early interest in the sea manifests quite clearly in the first seascapes he painted under the spell of Monet, continues throughout his career. The idea that art could at this time approach the abstract purity of music was very much a part of Signac's ideology. As early as 1887, he assigns opus numbers to his works. And in 1891, when he paints the remarkable series of seascapes at Carcano, he in fact adds musical subtitles to these works: Adagio, Scherzo, Presto Finale. Signac, whose career after all spanned 50 years, who had studied closely the works of Monet, whom he befriended, and who passed the baton to the next generation, Matisse and the Fauves, at first hand. And Signac, one might say, that beyond being an important link between the two generations, was in fact a living link between the two, and his art a vital link.
French-born, American resident writer Catherine Cusset is known here as a scholar of 18th century France, and in France as a popular new voice in the novel. It's a happy fact that her creative talents are now available for American readers in The Story of Jane, her first novel written directly in English. The bilingual Gallic author talks to Canape about multiple identities in books and in life.
So The Story of Jane is a story of a young professor of French literature who one day receives a package at home, and this package contains a manuscript, and the manuscript is entitled The Story of Jane. If you allow me to read a few lines, it will be more clear. She struggled with a padded envelope, which was both taped and stapled. Some soft grey-brown stuffing fell from the torn paper. Inside was a plain white envelope. This was a well-protected book. She took out a yellow folder. A computer disk slipping onto the floor startled her. Inside the folder was an unbound manuscript. The first page read, The Story of Jane, a novel. No author's name. On the second page, there was a table of contents. 1. Dinner with Bronzino. 2. Eric's Way. 3. Not even a kiss. 4. Recovery. Bronzino. Eric, men in her past. She looked at the brown envelope, no sender's name. The package had been mailed in New York 5 days earlier when Alex was still in France. It could not be Alex, of course. Jane quickly skipped through the first pages. It was about her and Bronzino, 9 years earlier. Someone well-informed, 348 pages. She turned to the end and read the last sentence. Downstairs, she found the package with the manuscript. She shuddered and looked up. Nothing could be seen through the glass panel but the rain and the water-soaked pink and white flowers of the magnolia tree. So I am French, and I'm writing a novel in English. I wrote it in English, about an American woman. And of course I had to think about what it was to be an American woman. So in what way Jane was different from me, because she's also very close to me in many ways, probably in the worst ways. When she irritates people, she's actually close to me. Her insecurity, her professional insecurity, her fear of not being good enough professionally, of having her private life interfere with her professional life, this seems to me to be more American, and as well as the desire to meet Mr. Right, this fear of not getting married, being a single woman, post-feminist single woman at the age of 30. The whole conflict between wanting to be independent and wanting to meet love. And my French novels, I don't think they could be translated into English because they are not traditional stories. They are much more intimate narratives, and they are much more about me and my sex life and my family. And Jane, of course it's linked to me too, because I'm a professor at Yale. It's a story of a professor in a prestigious university like Yale. But it is not my story. So the title of the book originally is in English, because I wrote the book in English. And the original title was The Trouble with Jane, which I translated into French, Le Problème avec Jane. But the American publisher changed the title, and they changed it to The Story of Jane, which is fine. However, there was a meaning to that title, The Trouble with Jane. Triple meaning. The first trouble with Jane is that she actually finds this manuscript, which is about her, and she has to find out who wrote her story. The second trouble with Jane is that she is an academic in an environment where there is a lot of pressure. And in order to keep her job, she needs to publish a book. And she becomes completely obsessed with publishing her first book. There's something very paradoxical in the academia about the fact that you need to publish a book, but it's a book for specialists, and it's extremely hard. You spend 10 years of your life trying to write and to publish that book, and in the end, 20 people are going to read it, And it's really a paradox, and it's very sad in a way. And Jane is fighting for years to manage to publish her first book. She even loses her husband, in a way, because of that. And when she succeeds and publishes her book, it doesn't really matter for her anymore. And third, the trouble with Jane is also a sentence that is used very often in the book when other people talk to Jane, and they tell her friends, her husband, her lovers, and they tell her, the trouble with you, Jane, is that you da-da-da-da. And they basically tell her something about her that she doesn't know. They tell her truth. And she's very impressed by what other people tell her, and she feels guilty and ashamed. And the book is about that. It's about the power that other people have on you and on your life. And actually the book is written by someone else, so it's exactly about that. Someone telling her, the trouble with you, Jane, is that you, the book is the answer to that. And it's about, the book is about her finding out that she is the only one able to determine what the trouble with her is.
Islam and the Resistance in Afghanistan, The Failure of Political Islam, and The New Central Asia. These books by internationally respected French writer and diplomat Olivier Roy were perhaps the domain of scholars a year ago. They are the concern of the world now. On a recent visit to the Institute of French Studies at New York University, Monsieur Roy took time to talk with Canape about how understanding ourselves today must be a truly international affair.
Le paradoxe de l'attentat du 11 septembre est que ça va bouleverser les relations internationales, mais pour des raisons qui n'ont pas grand-chose à voir avec la menace terroriste. C'est-à-dire que le terrorisme, en fait, relève d'une politique de sécurité, c'est une question de police, et ce n'est pas une question de stratégie ou de campagne militaire. Mais cela va avoir des conséquences sur les relations stratégiques. Par exemple, à partir du moment où on définit le terrorisme comme la menace principale, du coup, les autres menaces paraissent comme secondaires. Ce qui fait que l'administration Bush, par exemple, va adopter, ou a déjà adopté, une attitude beaucoup plus conciliante avec la Chine, qui était montrée comme l'ennemi principal il y a 6 mois. De même, les relations entre l'Occident et la Russie se sont considérablement améliorées. Et puis, je dirais, il y a un dernier point, c'est la mort du concept de rogue state, d'État voyou. Il est clair que les gens comme Oussama Ben Laden ont trouvé des appuis dans les pays, dans les États qui étaient théoriquement alliés des États-Unis, le Pakistan et l'Arabie Saoudite. Donc ce qui change, ce ne sont pas tellement les relations stratégiques en soi, c'est la perception que les Américains ont de ce qui est leurs ennemis et de ce qui est leurs amis. Une des autres conséquences des attentats du 11 septembre, mais surtout de l'offensive américaine contre l'Afghanistan, est de montrer que l'islam n'est pas un facteur de mobilisation politique. C'est-à-dire que quand les gens se mobilisent, c'est pour des tas de raisons, des solidarités ethniques, par exemple, entre Pashtuns d'Afghanistan et Pashtuns du Pakistan, des solidarités nationales, des solidarités anti-impérialistes, tiers-mondistes, contre les États-Unis, mais certainement pas de véritables solidarités religieuses. On ne voit pas émerger un mouvement d'islam politique qui dépasserait les conflits et les clivages propres au monde musulman. En ce sens, Ben Laden a totalement échoué à mobiliser la communauté musulmane du monde. Je crois que Oussama Ben Laden est condamné désormais à être un fugitif. Il gardera certainement une image positive chez beaucoup de jeunes musulmans déracinés parce qu'il est le David qui a mis en danger le Goliath. Il est en ce sens un peu le Che Guevara de l'islam. Mais je pense que Ben Laden a échoué, par manque de stratégie définie, à mobiliser politiquement le monde musulman. C'est avant tout un activiste, c'est un radical, mais ça n'est pas un leader politique. Ben Laden n'a pas de véritable stratégie. Donc Ben Laden est condamné finalement à rester aux franges, aux limites, à la périphérie du monde musulman. En s'engageant dans une guerre en Afghanistan, les Américains sont obligés de définir un but stratégique. Et ce but stratégique, évidemment, n'est pas la destruction de Ben Laden, puisque ce n'est pas avec une opération militaire qu'on s'emparera de Ben Laden. Le but stratégique des Américains est le renversement du régime taliban pour mettre fin à l'idée de sanctuarisation, c'est-à-dire à l'idée que des mouvements radicaux internationalistes peuvent trouver refuge dans un État donné. Et les Américains, sur ce plan-là, sont obligés de réussir. Après leur départ du Liban, leur départ de la Somalie, leur arrêt brutal de l'offensive contre Bagdad lors de la guerre du Golfe, les Américains sont obligés maintenant de montrer qu'ils parlent sérieusement. Donc ils sont condamnés à renverser le régime taliban.
Music has many powers, and in the wake of the tragic events in New York of September 11th, the world needs the kind of healing that music helps make. On Monday, October 15th, in a gesture of French-American solidarity, the French consulate in New York and the cultural services of the French embassy sponsored a non-denominational memorial concert for the victims of the terrorist attacks. Olivier Latry, the celebrated organist of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, came to contribute his talents. He talks to Canape.
Quand Pierre Cochereau, mon prédécesseur, est mort en 1984, le clergé de Notre-Dame a alors décidé de nommer plusieurs organistes afin d'assurer le service liturgique. Et donc, nous avons été nommés à 4 à ce moment-là, c'est en 1985. Et donc, depuis 1985, j'occupe une partie du poste d'organiste de Notre-Dame de Paris. Alors, l'Amérique est un pays avec lequel j'ai tissé beaucoup de liens au fil des temps, puisque j'ai effectué ma première tournée dans ce pays en 1986. Je suis revenu fréquemment, au moins 1 ou 2 fois par an, 3 fois cette année. Et donc j'avais une tournée prévue au mois d'octobre, donc à partir du 17 octobre. Et sachant cela, Emmanuel Morlet, attaché culturel de l'ambassade de France, m'a demandé s'il était possible de greffer à cette tournée un concert au bénéfice des familles des victimes des attentats du 11 septembre, ce que j'ai évidemment accepté d'emblée. Je crois que c'était une occasion par la musique d'essayer de transmettre un message qu'on peut difficilement transmettre autrement. Et c'est pour ça que ma réponse a été d'emblée positive. Le concert à l'église Saint-Ignace qui aura lieu ce soir à New York intégrera non seulement les requiem de Mozart en deuxième partie, dirigé par le chef de chœur et l'organiste de cette église, Ken Schreiter. En première partie, donc, intégrera des œuvres de Jean-Sébastien Bach, de Nicolas Grigny et des improvisations également. Tout ça pour essayer de faire passer en musique le message de paix que j'aimerais vraiment faire passer auprès de la communauté new-yorkaise et évidemment américaine. Les œuvres ont été vraiment choisies pour cela. Bon, d'abord Grigny, le Kyrie, Seigneur prends pitié évidemment, avec cette idée du repli sur soi et surtout de la confiance en soi qui vient par la musique et par la prière. Puis après ça, un extrait des 18 chorales de Leipzig qui relate l'événement de l'exode des Juifs au moment du passage de la mer Rouge sur les fleuves de Babylone. Et je crois que cet exode, finalement, c'est pas seulement tout ce que peuvent ressentir les gens qui sont dans la peine ici à New York, mais également l'exode de tous les peuples qui sont concernés à quelque niveau que ce soit par les attentats ici. Je veux dire, je pense ici évidemment à l'exode des catastrophes humanitaires du peuple afghan ou autre. Ça, c'est clair que le message là aussi s'adresse à ces gens-là également. Donc dans le cadre de cette tournée du mois d'octobre, après ce concert à New York, j'irai inaugurer un orgue à Staten Island. Ce sera le 17 octobre, puis j'irai de là à Plymouth dans le Michigan, Wichita au Kansas, Greensboro en Caroline du Nord. Et je reviendrai aux États-Unis encore au mois d'avril pour un concert à Washington, un autre concert à St. Paul. Et encore une fois au mois de novembre pour une académie mission d'une semaine à Lawrence, au Kansas.